I will put you back together. One of the most important lines in FNAF. It means an incredible amount to the story. Under many different interpretations of the lore, it means many different things. But for me, it certainly means putting your memories back together, since that's what usually it refers to. We hear Michael say in Sister Location,
"And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to."
This most likely refers to him bringing his sister's memories back, as she seems to slowly regain them throughout the game, and it quite honestly can't be referring to anything else. And even more so in the novels of Michael Brooks, who puts his friends back together so that they can have their happiest day. It's also heavily implied to be that, since the happiest day minigames are bite victim memories, as we see from the FNAF 4 minigames, with all 5 memories being put into one memory, putting him back together. Finding out who says these lines is crucially important to solving the main franchise's story. But to be fair, so are all of the Fredbear Plush's lines. For people unaware, in FNAF 4, you are followed around by a little golden Freddy plush who talks to you every day, and he possibly reveals the most lore that we've seen from the franchise to this day, not including the books. But the problem is, no one can solve these lines. Not only do we not understand what they're talking about fully, but we don't even know who's saying them. But I hope to answer that today. It is time to answer the long-awaited question, one being asked ever since 2015. Who is the Fredbear Plush? But hold on, it's not that simple. Do you really think we're just gonna hop into this with no context? Let's roll back a bit, all the way to 2015, and analyze the Fredbear Plushie's lines, as well as other characters in FNAF 4. We're gonna be specifically looking for ones relating to possibly find out the identity of the Fredbear Plush, so we may skip some lines here and there. An important thing to look out for will be any lines relating to what the bite victim saw, since that is undoubtedly related to the Fredbear Plush. So let's hop into that. "5 days until the party." A scene then opens up with a small Fredbear plush in the darkness. The plush will say, "What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again? Don't be scared. I am here with you." You will load into the main room of the minigame. You'll see the Fredbear plush sitting on a bed in the top right. And in the bottom left, you'll see 4 plushies of the original 4 animatronics of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with Foxy missing his head. If you approach these plushies, you will say, "These are my friends." You being a little child, crying, who for now we're going to call the crying child. To finish the minigame, you must bang on the door. After a while, you'll curl up into a little ball and begin to cry. The Fredbear plush will say, "Tomorrow is another day." The only super important things to glean from this one is that this child is clearly going through some bullying problems, and some family problems at home. The Fredbear plush seems to be nice to us, yet it's still too early on to know if he's really trying to help us. We also get a reference to him being friends with the original 4 animatronics. This has been commonly linked to both the MCI kids, as well as the original 4 animatronics in general, or just him having imaginary friends. Until now, it's not going to be very important, but it's important to note for later on that these interpretations exist. And we need to keep this line in mind, since FNAF 4, as Scott said, has no random Easter eggs. "4 days until the party." We load into the same place we were last time, but this time we're able to explore the house. Every time we enter a new room, the Fredbear plush will appear, seeming to follow us around. The Fredbear plush says, "You know he is hiding again. He won't stop until you find him." And, eventually, over there, as you go towards the living room, walking over to the TV will cause a jump scare by your older brother wearing a Foxy mask. The Fredbear plush will then say, "Tomorrow is another day." In this minigame, we can also get an empty girl's room with a flower, as well as a mangled toy on the ground. Our suspicions are confirmed that this child is experiencing some family trouble, and seeming to come to his brother. The person to lock him inside his room also seems like his brother, as the Fredbear plush is referring to he in both, and while that is yes just a pronoun, it makes sense that the he is the same person each time. We'll get to the empty girl's room eventually, but the most common interpretations is this either belongs to Cassidy or Elizabeth Afton. "3 days until the party. You spawn in the FNAF 4 restaurant. You're crying underneath a table. The Fredbear Plush says, he left without you. He knows you hate it here. You're right beside the exit. If you run, you can make it. Hurry, run towards the exit." This, although the Fredbear Plush seems to not be in the building, yet we know the Fredbear Plush is talking due to the text color. When you run towards the exit, an employee wearing a Fredbear suit will spawn in front of you. The Fredbear Plush will then say, "It's too late. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what will happen if he catches you." You then run left towards the stage. You see shadows of Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. The Fredbear Plush then says, "You can find help, but you need to get past them. You need to be strong." This while again seeming to not be in the same frame. When you try to walk towards the stage, the person wearing the Fredbear suit will keep following you. After this, you will collapse, crying while hiding under a table. The Fredbear Plush then says, "Tomorrow is another day." In the beginning, if you choose to walk towards the stage, the Fredbear Plush will say, "No, don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way. Hurry and leave." Also, after the Fredbear Plush talks about him being scared of the shadows, you can then go back to the left to see a purple man, which we know is William Afton, helping an employee into his Spring Bonnie suit. This minigame shows us that William Afton, aka the bite victim's father, seems to still be working at this location, which seems to be Fredbear's family diner, during the events of FNAF 4. It also lets us know that while the Fredbear Plush is talking, William seems to be working. During this night, it has a heavy emphasis on what the bite victim saw, which, due to the Easter egg of being stuffed into a suit, could be referring to Andrew or the MCI. That is, if the plush is being genuine. We have to remember the teaser quote, "What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child," meaning the bite victim could have misunderstood what he saw, meaning the plush, having malicious intent, intentionally scaring the bite victim, wouldn't be out of the possibility. "2 days until the party. The Fredbear Plush says, he hates you. You have to get up. You can get out this time, but you have to hurry." Like the night before, you're trapped inside Fredbear's family diner, but this time you're able to leave the building. After exiting, you have the ability to interact with other children on your way back home. Right outside of Fredbear's, there's a child holding a Spring Bonnie plush, aka Plush Trap. You can talk to him. The child will say, "Where's your plush toy? Mine is Spring Bonnie. My daddy says I have to be careful with him, or he'll pinch my finger. He's a finger trap," he says. The next frame down, you can talk to a little girl with pigtails, wearing an orange dress. She will say, "You better watch out. I hear they come to life at night, and if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone. Why do you look so worried? See you at the party." If you walk down again, you can talk to a boy wearing a green shirt and blue jeans, laughing on the sidewalk. When you talk to him, he will taunt you, asking, "Aren't you the kid who always hides under tables and cries? Huh, no one else is scared. Why are you? Stop being such a baby." If you walk left and then up, you can talk to another girl wearing a purple shirt in the playground. She will ask, "Why are you crying? Don't you like my toy collection?" This is the famous scene where we see Toy Chica without her beak. If you walk to the left, you'll see a little boy holding a balloon. He will ask, "Are you going to the party? Everyone is going to the party. Oh wait, you have to go. It's your birthday." On that whole walk home, the Fredbear Plush have appeared in many different places, nonsensical at that, like on appearing on a flower, behind a fence, or in the sewer drain. When you step into your house, the Fredbear Plush will then say, "Be careful." We can then see a TV show called Fredbears and Friends play on the TV if you wait long enough. The main stars being Fredbear and his friends, which are Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Notably, Spring Bonnie is not on the TV, just the main cast from the first game. At the end, you will see the date, 1983. Once you go to your room, your brother will scare you with a Foxy mask under your bed. You'll then begin to cry, and the Fredbear Plush will say, "Tomorrow is another day." There are many different interpretations of that pigtail girl's lines. One of them being it's referring to Andrew or the MCI, but there's also interpretations of it just being a rumor, or it referring to FNAF 1, with them coming to life at night, hiding people's bodies and never telling anyone. We also learn here that the reason people are bullying the crying child is because he cries under tables constantly, meaning it's unlikely he actually got bullied before he started freaking out all the time. We also see a lot of evidence here that the Fredbear Plush is possessed, teleporting around, appearing in nonsensical places that don't make any sense, even for a camera to be. We also get some hints here that the older brother is responsible for setting up this birthday, as well as the beginning lines, trying to push the crying child away from Michael, saying things like, "He hates you." The Fredbear Plush seems to be playing both sides of the coin. Sometimes he seems helpful, warning the bite victim, guiding him, making sure he's safe. But then other times, he's abusive. The way I see it, this character is either someone who is intentionally scaring the bite victim, only being nice to gain his trust every once in a while, or it's someone who does care about him but can't understand the difference between trying to help him and between scaring him. One day until the party. You look to be trapped inside a spare room of Fredbears. You see many different types of endos. We see both Spring Bonnie and a Fredbear head. Sitting next to you is an empty Fredbear. You start to cry. "Please, let me out. Please." You fall on your side and continue to cry. "Please let me out." The minigame ends, but this time it does not say tomorrow is another day. Notably, there are wires sticking out of Fredbear's head. This has been commonly linked to hair, although it is probably just wires. Also notable, while the crying child was in distress, the plush was nowhere to be seen. In the moments we needed it most, it was not there, which is quite odd for the interpretation that the plush wants to help you, although there are explanations for it, but we will keep this in mind when looking at the theories later on. Zero days until the party. You are surrounded by 4 older children wearing masks of the 4 original animatronics, one of which is your brother wearing the Foxy mask, and also another kid that you talked to on your way home, the kid laughing on the sidewalk, that being the Freddy bully. One of the friends says, "Wow, your brother is kind of baby, isn't he?" The brother then says, "It's hilarious. Why don't we help him get a closer look? He will love it." You then cry, "No, please." The brother says, "Come on guys, let's give the man a lift. He wants to get up close and personal." The older kids lift you up and carry you throughout the diner as you're freaking out, saying, "No, I don't want to go." The brother keeps going. "You heard the little man, he wants even closer." They get to the stage. The older brother then says, "Hey guys, I think the little man said he wants to give Fredbear a big kiss on 3. 1, 2. They lift you into Fredbear's mouth, laughing until Fredbear bites down and crushes your head. They stop laughing, and the minigame ends. You are in a dark place. There's the Fredbear plush in front of you, and 4 other plushies of the original animatronics, the same ones from your home, further away from him, at a distance now. You can hear your brother say, "Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry." Music starts to play. What seems to be the Fredbear plush says, "You're broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that?" As this is happening, the other animatronics fade away after every line. The Fredbear plush then says, "I am still here." And then it says the line that we started this video with, "I will put you back together." The Fredbear plush fades away as making that last promise, and you fade away as well, crying, as a flat line can be heard in the background. These 2 last minigames mean a lot for who the Fredbear plush is. For one, the bite victim dies at the end of these minigames, getting bit by Fredbear, And we also get a final speech from the Fredbear Plush. There are many interpretations of these lines, which we will get into, but as talked about before, they are heavily linked to Happiest Day. You might say that this might confirm that the Fredbear Plush has good intentions, but there is a problem with that. This final speech is in a different hex color than the rest of the Fredbear Plush's lines. Nights 1 to 5 being FFFF57, and night 6 being FFFFA0. People have used this to spark the next part of our conversation, PlushUno or PlushDuo. PlushUno, as implied by the name, is the theory that the Fredbear Plush is one entity throughout the entire time of FNAF 4 talking to the bite victim. This is pretty straightforward, but it does need a workaround for the text color shift, and there is one. The answer being that it's based on the situation. For example, under Will Plush, he's speaking through the plushie throughout the entire week, but at the end he's talking in real life, explaining the difference. There's also the obvious one that Scott may have made a mistake. With that out of the way, let's get the PlushDuo. PlushDuo is the theory that the text color shift is meant to show that the bite victim is being spoken to by two separate entities. One's from minigames 1 to 6 or nights 1 to 5, and one on minigame 7 or night 6. This would be supported by the fact that, while yes, the Fredbear Plush is seemingly caring to the crying child, a lot of what he says seems to be more about scaring him than protecting him. For example, he hates you, and you need to get up. You can get out this time, but you need to hurry. Things like that seem to indicate he's more focused on trying to scare him than actually trying to help him. This would contrast with the lines of the last minigame on night 6, where the bite victim is told, "We are still your friends, and I will put you back together." Both of these theories then go on to the importance of FNAF World and its lore, which I'm gonna quickly explain, since it's crucial to the Fredbear Plush's identity and also what the Fredbear Plush does after FNAF 4. Now, I understand that not everyone thinks FNAF World is canon, but please sit through this one, since this is implied anyways even without FNAF World. It's just meant to clarify it. The Fredbear Plush says, "Everything that happens out there has an effect in here. Do you understand? This is a safe place. This is a sanctuary. But something has gone wrong, and now it can be seen here. Something went very wrong. That's why I'm here. But I won't let the same happen to you. I will put you back together." We are then sent on a quest by the Fredbear Plush to find 5 clocks resembling the first 5 Happiest Day minigames. These are breadcrumbs to help him find his way, and the hints to the Happiest Day minigames themselves. The ones that can be seen in the hallway of FNAF 3. The Fredbear Plush, after you find all of these, then says, "We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? The pieces are now in place for you. All you need to do is find them. Rest." This directly mirrors what the Fredbear Plush says in FNAF 4's ending, which is important when you look at a few details. FNAF World, while seemingly not important, does have connections to the FNAF lore, through FNAF 3 and 4 both being referenced in the clock ending and Old Man Consequences appearing in UCN. Then looking at the fact the Old Man Consequences ending is called Happiest Day, as well as the inclusion of an open FNAF 4 box, seems to suggest that the things that are 100% connected to the FNAF lore are indeed canon, this being Old Man Consequences and the clock ending. This would link the FNAF 4 minigames to the FNAF 3 minigames, and if we do some extra analysis, we can see that this was already the case. For example, Happiest Day being a reverse of Fredbear's Family Diner. Would be weird for all of these things we see in FNAF 4 to then connect to FNAF 3 if there was no random Easter eggs. This would make Happiest Day the bite victim's memories put there by the Fredbear Plush. If you then look at the fact that I will put you back together normally refers to memories, this theory seems confirmed by FNAF World itself and implied by everything outside of it. It's called Free Victim if you're wondering. This would mean that the Fredbear Plush, or at least the Night 6 speaker, needs to be in some way connected to the bite victim's Happiest Day. Most likely the one setting it up, but we'll get there when we get there. So under PlushUno, the entity in FNAF 4 needs to set up the bite victim's Happiest Day, or some way be a part of it, and then under PlushDuo, only the Night 6 speaker does. With that out of the way, let's hop into the theories. Andrew Plush is the theory that the Fredbear Plush is possessed by Andrew from the Fazbear Fright stories, mainly the Main Room 1280, the epilogues, and the New Kid. For this theory, you obviously need to believe that Andrew died in 1983, unlike what is shown in Into the Pit, where Andrew is the 6th victim of the MCI in 1985. This theory is most commonly paired with theories around Andrew being what the bite victim saw that is referred to in FNAF 4, since the Fredbear Plush in that case would be telling the bite victims to stay away from animatronics that he was killed and lured by, being lured by William Afton and stuffed into Fredbear, as seen by the New Kid, and implied in UCN's ending. You also have to obviously believe theories such as Stitchline Games or Andrew Games, which place Andrew in the game's timeline. This theory goes off the fact that the bite victim is clearly scared of Fredbear, since when he's going towards the stage, it says, "Don't you remember what you saw?" It can't be referring to the safe room, or the back room that's behind you, since that's not in that direction. It needs to be referring to one of the animatronics. And the rest of the game heavily implies that that animatronic is Fredbear. There's also the lines talking about you know what will happen if he catches you. I've also seen people say in the past that him saying them when referring to the shadow animatronics proves that he's scared of both, and I think he probably is. He's probably just scared of all yellow suits. But I don't think that necessarily needs to mean that he saw both of them, just that he's scared of both of them. Then there's the Pinktail Girl line, which we're going to be talking about a lot. The Pinktail Girl says, "You better watch out. I hear they come to life at night, and if you die, they hide your body and never tell anyone. Why do you look so worried? See you at the party." People have taken this to say that someone, a kid, had died and bite victim saw it. And now this girl is making rumors that she's heard about it. And while, yes, that is an interpretation, there's also interpretations that this is the MCI, or that it's just the rumor. Or also the interpretation it's referring to FNAF 1, since it directly mirrors what is said in the FNAF 1 phone call by Phone Guy, the same phone call that can be heard on the nights of FNAF 4. So basically the theory is, bite victim most likely saw Andrew, the Fredbear Plush is most likely what the bite victim saw, so simply, that means Andrew is the Fredbear Plush. This is the same evidence for Sammy Plush. But the problem with both Sammy Plush and Andrew Plush is that they don't actually have a lot of evidence outside of that. Story-wise, this might make sense, but if you really look at the evidence, it lacks. Both Sammy and Andrew also seem to lack the motivation that the Plush has in World, or at least seem not to have it from what we can tell. In conclusion, these two theories are possible, but they have so little details to back them up that they're not even worth talking about. Let's move on to the next theory. Shadow Freddy Plush is the theory that Shadow Freddy is the speaker inside of the Fredbear Plush. Now, for most of these theories, I got secondary sources and other people to explain me the theories even if I already knew them, so I can get as many perspectives as possible. But a problem with Shadow Plush is I was literally unable to find anyone else who believed this theory, and the original doc didn't have a lot of evidence. So I did my own research for this one, looking for the evidence, and I'm pretty happy with what I found. Let's look on what may imply this is the case. Starting off, the final boss of FNAF 4 is Nightmare, who is Shadow Freddy, as the Nightmare text box in FNAF 4 is called Shadow Freddy in the files. He also just generally has a similar appearance to Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy also seems to have a clear connection to the bite in this case, with Nightmare's design having rigid teeth, and being similar to Nightmare Fredbear, who is also linked to the bite. You could go on to say that this is evidence that Shadow Freddy was made at the bite, but due to UCN we know this isn't the case. As Shadow Freddy says, "I am your wickedness made of flesh." The second question is, why would Shadow Freddy torture the bite victim? And is the Fredbear Plush even torturing the bite victim? When it comes to the Fredbear Plush, a lot of the lines from nights 1 to 5 really imply that he's being tormented, or potentially purposely being scared, saying things like "run and hide," "he hates you," things that would scare a normal child. And a lot of the lines around being friends would simply match up with putting on a facade in order to scare him more. The second question is, why would Shadow Freddy do this? And that is quite simple. The bite victim is constantly crying throughout the week of FNAF 4, and as we learn from the epilogues as well as the fourth closet, agony leaves people through tears, meaning that Shadow Freddy in this case would be feeding off the agony of the bite victim. It would be advantageous for Shadow Freddy to want to feed off this agony, meaning he definitely has the motivation to do all this. The plush also has obvious links to Golden Freddy. This fills in a lot of the evidence that's used for Cassidy Plush and Golden Freddy Plush without actually it being Golden Freddy. His abusive behavior would also line up towards William, as Shadow Freddy is made from William. It's his wickedness made of flesh. This connection to William would also explain why William shares so much lines with the Fredbear Plush while not actually being the Fredbear Plush himself. Shadow Freddy is an extension of William, meaning them sharing lines wouldn't be uncommon. But as with all theories, it comes with questions, ones that need to be answered. For example, was Shadow Freddy even a thing by FNAF 4, since that's extremely earlier in the timeline? There are some indications of this, a huge one being his connection to FNAF 4. While yes, FNAF 4 does not happen in 1983 and actually happens many years later, either in the 1990s or in 2020s when Michael has those dreams, his connection to the minigames should not be overlooked, since if we look at the minigames to the nights, they connect quite a bit. For example, on night 1, Foxy doesn't have a head, just like he doesn't appear on night 1. We get attacked by Fredbear the same night that we see a Fredbear suit. Foxy jump scares us in the minigame the same night he shows up in-game. So Nightmare appearing in the game should connect to the minigames of FNAF 4. And as we already discussed, since we know he can't be made from the crying child's death, it would make a lot more sense for him to be his little plushie. Under Shadow Midnight Motorist and Afton Midnight Motorist, this theory has even more ground to stand on, as Shadow Freddy would be the thing that the bite victim saw, making him being the Fredbear Plush extremely reasonable. In my opinion, this theory is extremely likely. I obviously didn't cover the whole theory yet. You're gonna have to wait until we get to my opinion section. But this is the basis. Shadow Freddy needs to exist before FNAF 4 and then be the thing communicating with the crying child, most likely from nights 1 to 5. Let's move on to the next theory. William plushes the theory that William Afton, the bite victim's father, is talking to him through the Fredbear Plush on the week of FNAF 4. This theory is commonly linked up with PlushUno because of the text color change, as well as William not making a lot of sense to set up the happiest day, although there has been explanations for it. The main evidence for this is the sister location private room, where we see the Fredbear Plush sitting on a desk, and when you write the code 1983, which is when FNAF 4 happens, you will see cameras all throughout the FNAF 4 house that we play through in the game, seeming to be a testing facility and not the actual bedroom of the bite victim. Sitting with the Fredbear Plush is a little device that looks like a walkie-talkie or a remote with 16 buttons and a speaker.
The 16 buttons actually lines up with the 16 minigame panels in FNAF 4, making the claim that William is speaking to the bite victim all throughout those first 5 nights. This would obviously go under the interpretation that the plush is being abusive, torturing the bite victim in some way, since William would be doing experiments on him as well due to the cameras. This theory also uses the fact that William's text color in Fruity Maze is quite similar to the Fredbear Plushes in FNAF 4, as well as the Midnight Motorist father also having a similar text color. William Afton also says a lot of similar things to the Fredbear Plush, sharing a lot of lines, such as telling Michael to put her back together.
I put her back together, just like you asked me to.
And Toy Chica in Toy Chica's high school years, which is meant to be a representation of William Afton, saying, "Tomorrow is another day."
Dear Diary, things didn't work out as I'd hoped, and once again I'm left with nothing but a broken heart. But tomorrow is another day, and I just know that there's a guy out there that's right for me.
There's also evidence such as the Fazbear Fright story, The Cliffs, which people think is meant to parallel William Afton, since we have a father monitoring their child through a plushie, one which seems to be supernatural. And we have The Real Jake, a story of a father talking to his son, who has cancer, through a closet door, with what's inside the closet being a little doll, named Simon, who's based on Jake. The reason this is the case is that Jake has a lot of parallels to the bite victim. He has a head injury, he's caring in the epilogues, his main goal is to collect pieces to set Andrew free, which lines up with what is said in FNAF World, as well as Jake just generally having a similar design to the bite victim. Now, let me bring up the problems with this theory, which are a plethora of them. First off, the cameras in the back room of Sister Location are clearly implied to be the cameras that are on the screen and not the cameras that they claim to be in FNAF 4. We see a plushie that's supposed to be a security device that apparently has a walkie-talkie and appears to have 16 buttons, which does line up with the minigames of FNAF 4, but 3 of those buttons need to be for the bedroom. It wouldn't make any sense for the Fredbear Plush to not be associated with the cameras that are literally right next to it in the room. To me, this is more meant to imply that William tortured the bite victim at some point, through the FNAF 4 bedroom using illusion discs to cause him the nightmares, and he probably spoke through the Fredbear Plush during those torture sections. I'll pick up this explanation a little later when it gets to my opinion section, but I feel like this makes a lot more sense than him actually speaking on the week of FNAF 4. There's also a huge problem with him speaking on the week of FNAF 4. That huge problem being, 1, the plush is very clearly possessed. It shows up as just a head on a flower. It shows up on nonsensical places even for cameras to be. If that car right there moves, then the plush is gone. If it falls down the sewer, then the plush is gone. If someone sees the plush in clearly open spaces like on that flower, then the plush is gone. And we know that this is the actual places that the plush is appearing due to this kid right here, who says, "Where is your plushie?" Meaning it's actually behind that car. Also, if William was speaking through a walkie-talkie, everyone would be able to hear it in the vicinity, like the employee at Fredbear's or the older brother in the house. But even more important than that, the Fredbear Plush even talks to the bite victim when it isn't around, heavily implying that he's talking within his own head. And since we mentioned Fredbear's Family Diner, let's mention the biggest problem with the theory: William putting the suit on the employee on the week of FNAF 4. How is William Afton helping an employee into a suit and speaking through a walkie-talkie at the exact same time? The simple answer is he's not, because he isn't the plushie. And before you say, Scott said that there was a retcon in between FNAF 1 and Sister Location. While that is true, he also said that no one noticed that retcon. And people clearly noticed the William retcon. The retcon Scott was referring to was most likely the FNAF 1 newspapers that said William got convicted, because we know that's not true. William never went to prison and never got charged. And we also know that that was changed before Sister Location because that was in the books trilogy. That alone would throw William Plush out of a possibility. The backroom Easter egg, which no Easter eggs are random, cannot be thrown out as a retcon, and it also deconfirms this theory, meaning Will Plush is incorrect. But I'm still going to address the few remaining pieces of evidence. Referring to the sharing of the text colors, a lot of characters share text colors, The Pink-Tail Girl shares it with the Fredbear Plush. There's 2 kids in FNAF 4, the Freddy Bully and the Plush Trap Kid, who also share text colors. And it isn't the same hex code either. And there's also easy explanations, like the fact that it's a yellow plushie. When talking about William sharing lines with the Fredbear Plush, like tomorrow is another day, or putting people back together, a lot of people share lines with the Fredbear Plush. Elizabeth Afton calls herself broken. She says, I'm still here. Michael Afton shares lines with the Fredbear Plush. Michael Brooks says he's gonna put people back together in the novel trilogy. While yes, Toy Chica does say tomorrow is another day, it's also one of the most popular quotes in the series. As Mr. Hippo says, sometimes a story is just a story. Not every detail needs to matter. Toy Chica, in a silly anime cartoon, saying one of the most popular quotes of the franchise is not sufficient evidence, especially for a theory that has so much against it. And finally, the Fazbear Frights connections. In the real Jake, Jake is not a bite victim parallel. The family situation is nowhere close the same, and the only connection he really has is that he has a head injury and he dies. Unlike the bite victim, Jake is never taken to the hospital, and he has a loving and caring father. He actually lines up a lot more with Charlotte, who also has a loving, caring father, has a much more similar family situation, and Charlie's toys from the trilogy line up way more with Simon than the Fredbear Plush does, since Ella is made to look like Charlie, and Theodore also talks to Charlie in her dad's voice. Also, Jake's goal to free Andrew by collecting pieces of him more lines up with Charlotte setting up the happiest day. And secondly, for the Cliffs never actually has the dad speaking through the plushie, only monitoring his son through it, which we know that William also does. But this plushie is also clearly possessed by something, an entity. If anything, this should prove that William loses control of the plushie, as it gets possessed by some sort of entity. Also, to quickly touch on Will's final speaker, the final speaker is clearly talking about the happiest day and setting it up. William setting up the happiest day makes very little sense at all, since the happiest day is literally the reverse of William's actions. In conclusion, Will Plush is really bad. It had evidence if you look at the surface level, but once you actually look into it, it doesn't make any sense, especially on the week of FNAF 4. On to the next theory. Agony Plush is the theory that the bite victim's agony possesses the Fredbear Plush on the week of FNAF 4. This is a quite interesting concept, but let's look a little deeper into it to see what we can find more. The first piece of evidence that really sticks out is the stuff that the Fredbear plushie says. A lot of the lines imply some sort of fear of getting caught, scaring the bite victim. And if this was the agony from seeing what he saw or the experiment rooms, this would make quite a lot of sense. And communicating with him would all be completely normal. It's kind of like the theory back in the day when the bite victim would be talking to himself, but this time it's a separate entity made from his agony. There's also stuff like the real Jake. Jake, which people think is a bite victim parallel, goes on to possess his plushie through agony. While I personally disagree with Jake being a bite victim parallel, for those who do, this isn't a bad point. There's also the Ella doll in the Charlie trilogy itself, which would also reflect this, being possessed by Henry's agony of his memories of his daughter. It would be the game's version of Ella, which would make sense since Charlie and bite victim seem to parallel in some way in the novels, both even having a fear of Foxy. This parallel evidence is understandable, although Charlotte is her own defined character, meaning paralleling them in this way is kind of weird, but it still works. Agony Plush, at its core, is kind of a concept with less evidence, but works if you don't believe any of the other theories. A lot of it has to do with your interpretation of FNAF 4. In my opinion, this isn't the best theory, but it's also not the worst. And I personally believe it works better under PlushUno than Duo. Moving on to everyone's favorite, Cassidy Plush.
Cassidy Plush is the theory that Cassidy possesses the Fredbear Plush on the week of FNAF 4. These arguments were helped by Eve. Go subscribe to her, she's pretty cool, and really helped me out since I'm not very well versed in the theory. Their channel is in the link below. Starting off, Cassidy is proven to be the 5th kid because of this shot in the logbook with the grave that says my name on it. This my name hint is then used to solve Cassidy in the word search, proving that Cassidy is the 5th MCI victim. So this theory only really works under MCI 83. All the evidence I mentioned before of Andrew also implies to Cassidy, with her being the thing that the bite victim would see in this case. And Cassidy is obviously linked to Golden Freddy, who is linked to the plush. This theory uses the fact that the plush represents the MCI kids to say that Cassidy is meant to represent Fredbear, and is literally Fredbear in the fact that she's possessing it. The Freddy plush would represent Freddy, the Bonnie plush would represent Bonnie, so it only makes sense for the Fredbear plush to represent Golden Freddy. The plush also seems to be a spirit, due to it teleporting and appearing as only a head on a flower, as well as its eyes following us around, but sometimes having no eyes. And some of these things match with Golden Freddy, like a head appearing on a flower, just like Golden Freddy only appeared as a head in FNAF 2. The Fredbear plush would also line up with personality, since we know from the logbook that Cassidy is caring towards the bite victim, and is extremely protective towards them. But it seems like they're so overprotective that they're emotionally abusive towards the bite victim, reminding him of the traumatic thing that he saw. Going back to the Fredbear plush again, Cassidy knows about the plush when talking about the plush on a page, saying, "Does he still talk to you?" Cassidy knowing about the plush would make sense if she was the plush themselves, unless you go under other theories like Shatter Victim, which I don't have time to explain right now, so a document with an explanation for Shatter Victim will be linked in the description as soon as it's ready. Moving to FNAF World, Cassidy would make sense to try to put the BV back together, as in the logbook we see her trying to put him back together by trying to get him to remember his past. There's also no hint showing up for Happiest Day, which would show that Cassidy doesn't want to free herself, which is implied in UCN. But as with all theories, there are problems. The MCI is heavily implied to be in 1985, both by the Fazbear Frights and the novels having the date placed in 1985 and not in 1983. This is also implied by the phone calls, which say that Spring Suits were retired before the MCI. Cassidy doesn't seem to set up the Happiest Day. It seems the other way around, with it being set up for her. So her being responsible for the first 5 minigames just not to free herself doesn't make much sense. In the logbook, Cassidy refers to the Fredbear plush in 3rd person and says, "Does he still talk to you?" This doesn't make much sense if she's the Fredbear plush, because she would know that it doesn't still talk to him, because it's her, unless she was putting up a bit for almost a decade at that point. Probably more if the logbook is in 23. Cassidy Plush is an okay theory, but if you believe MCI 85, it kinda just falls apart, and some of the logic with Happiest Day and the logbook doesn't make complete sense. On to the next theory. Elizabeth Plush is the theory that Elizabeth Afton is the Fredbear Plush from FNAF 4. Now this theory has numerous problems, but let's quickly go over the evidence. These eyes in FNAF World are the same color as these eyes in FNAF World. Elizabeth Afton also says that she's broken.
Everything is okay. I'm still here.
I'm broken. I can't be fixed.
And that's about it. The only other evidence is if bite victim saw Elizabeth die, which we know is impossible because of how Baby works. She only kills people when they're the only person in the room. But off the bat, voice lines are quite bad evidence, considering a lot of characters refer to people as broken and share lines with the Fredbear plush, and these FNAF World eyes are not the same shape. Elizabeth Plush is a really bad theory. Moving on to the next one. MikePlush is the theory that Michael Afton is the Fredbear Plush from FNAF 4. This mostly goes off the line saying, "I put her back together" in sister location, since people say it shows that Michael says, "I will put you back together" in FNAF 4.
I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now.
The problem with this is two very simple things. William told Michael to put her back together, so Michael wouldn't be saying it beforehand, and Michael spoke right before the Fredbear Plush, meaning it doesn't really make sense for him to be the Fredbear Plush. MikePlush is really bad. Moving on to the next theory. Charlotte Plush is the theory that Charlotte Emily, the daughter of Henry Emily, is the Fredbear Plushie from the week of FNAF 4. Let's begin. Starting off, the Fredbear Plush sits on top of a grandfather clock, but the Fredbear Plush is linked to clocks even more, being linked to them in FNAF World. Why this is important is the puppet's music box is actually called My Grandfather's Clock, which is actually the same clock that the Fredbear Plush is sitting on top of in FNAF 4. We also have this Nightmare teaser, where if you brighten up the image to see Nightmare the plush will turn golden. Also, the bite victim and Charlotte clearly have a connection to one another. The bite victim has the same type of stripes that the puppet does and also is constantly crying. They also appear in very similar positions in the FNAF 3 minigames to the FNAF 4 minigames. Their deaths are also both caused by the same thing. Charlie is bullied outside of the pizzeria and killed by William, and bite victim is bullied and thrown into Fredbear's mouth. And if Charlotte is the Fredbear Plush, their fates would be tied up in their design. Charlotte would be a golden bear, reflecting how bite victim was bitten in the jaws of Fredbear. And bite victim looks like the puppet, which would reflect how Charlotte is left to die in the alley with the puppet wrapped around her waist, reflecting their fates. They would also be connected by the date that they died in 1983, with Charlotte being dead in 1983 in the novels, as well as them both dying at Fredbear's, as indicated by the novels, as well as FFPS being the place where Charlotte died because of the alleyway, and FFPS being implied to be Fredbear's by a security breach. With its posters, the puppet has also been seen to be able to cause hallucinations, as seen in FNAF 2, and have the ability to fly in the security puppet minigame, meaning that she could make all of the things that the bite victims see possible. Charlotte has been shown many times to be a protective spirit, and Henry even states that fact in the FNAF 6 ending.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
This would line up with the Fredbear Plush, especially in Night 6 seeming to be a protective speaker, wanting to put him back together. Charlotte is also possibly the thing that the bite victim saw looking at Midnight Motorist. If bite victim is the kid in Midnight Motorist, as implied by things like Curse of Dreadbear and the title screen of FNAF 4, it would make perfect sense that later that night is referring to Charlotte's death, with the rain, the tire tracks, and the car carrying over from the minigame. And finally, I Will Put You Back Together is the best evidence for Charlotte Plush. The Fredbear Plush in FNAF World is implied to put together the Happy Stay. This is also implied in FNAF 4 itself. In FNAF 4, we also see links to Happiest Day absolutely everywhere. It's a game about Happiest Day, with the final minigame being the promise made to do Happiest Day. As said before, Happiest Day is taking the memories of the bite victim and putting them back together into one memory. And Charlotte is the one putting these memories back together, as she is the one who gives out the cake on the final minigame, which is the final action of finishing the Happiest Day. Both under bite victim receiving cake and Cassidy receiving cake, bite victim gets put back together by the Happiest Day. And considering the fact that FNAF 4 is all about the Happiest Day, the promise to put him back together was most likely done by the person who did it, aka Charlotte. There are some points against Charlotte Plush. People have brought up in the past that the attitude of the plush from nights 1 to 5 doesn't really add up with Charlotte, since the behavior is borderline abusive, and I 100% agree with that. Charlotte Plush definitely works better under PlushUno, but even with that, the evidence for her being the final speaker in my opinion is undeniable, especially under MCI 85. In a game all about Happiest Day, why wouldn't the final lines be referring to it? And if the final lines are referring to it, why wouldn't they be Charlotte? Especially in a game which basically has no links to William, who is the only other one who could have potentially put the bite victim back together, as indicated through his science experiments, as well as Molten Freddy being the amalgamation of the MCI kids, aka the bite victim if you believe in Shatter Victim. To me, Charlotte Plush, or at least Charlotte Final Speaker, just makes sense. But with all of this said, what is my defined opinion on exactly what happens in FNAF 4 and who the Fredbear Plush is? Let's begin. First off, this is just my opinion, so don't kill me over my opinion in the comments. Secondly, I'm not going to fully explain all of my points, since if I were to do that, this video would be even longer than it already is. Let's hop into it. This is under PlushUno, since I personally find the text colors as sufficient evidence to say that it's not the same entity speaking to the crying child, as well as the drastically different personalities, one being caring and one not being caring. Also, a lot of the theories having to do with Andrew or Cassidy are off the table because I believe MCI 85. This theory starts for me with Midnight Motorist. A lot of people don't like Afton Midnight Motorist because of Purple Guy being orange, but honestly, I don't really see a problem with it. In Fruity Maze, we see the Purple Guy's text, and it's a variation of orange/yellow. There's also these images of a man in FNAF 6, both wearing purple and orange, who have been theorized to be Afton. There's also this Curse of Dreadbear Easter egg with the car. Sometimes the light will be orange and sometimes it will be purple. This is especially important considering the fact that Curse of Dreadbear is all about FNAF 4, so I don't personally find the orange to be a real problem. We also have someone watching TV, which does link to Michael Afton, who I believe to be the Foxy Bro, as he does the same activity in Sister Location. He even has the gray text and shirt. His personality change towards Bite Victim is also easily explainable, because as we know from the Freddy bully in FNAF 4, people bully the bite victim for being scared and hiding under tables, something he presumably wouldn't do around this time. We also see him walking out of a purple car. The only purple car in this section of the minigame, mind you, as all the other purple cars are only on the highway section. This car is quite similar to the one that's seen in Give Gifts Give Life, and the one that we know was in Security Puppet due to the tire tracks. This could possibly show that Midnight Motors happens after Charlotte's murder, since we have the tire tracks, purple car, purple guy going away from a potential crime scene, as well as the rain that can be seen on both nights. There's also the file Later That Night referring to Midnight Motorist, suggesting it's later that night to an important event, in this case, Charlotte's death. Orange Man's behavior also seems to line up with William since we know from the novels he's not the best father. There's also a huge implication that the FNAF 4 experiment victim is the bite victim, which leads into my next point. The house that can be seen in MM is quite similar to the one that can be seen on the title screen of FNAF 4. In the Curse of Fredbear DLC, we see this house in the background, but we also have links to Midnight Motorist, due to the car that I mentioned beforehand. In my opinion, this solidly connects Bite Victim, Midnight Motorist, and the experiment rooms together. Also, looking at the fact that the Orange Man says he'll be sorry when he gets back, most likely referring to Bite Victim, would suggest that the timeline goes like this. Later that night happens, which is after Charlotte's death. Bite Victim then gets put into the experiment rooms, and then due to the plushie in the experiment rooms having a head, while the one in his household not having a head, as well as, him dying at the end of the minigames, the experiments happen before FNAF 4. We also know Charlotte is the first victim due to many factors. 1. Henry states that she's the first victim of William Afton in the Insanity ending.
It keeps me awake at night. I could make myself sleep, but not yet. Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
Also looking at the timeline, based on FNAF 4's original release date and Curse of Dreadbear being themed around Halloween, that's probably when the bite happens. But we also know that Charlotte dies as Fredbear's, for the points that I stated before in the Charlotte Plush section. And the bite was likely the thing that closed Fredbear's family diner, meaning taking that into account, as well as looking at the fact that Charlotte needs to die in 1983 due to her dying in 1983 in the novels, Charlotte most likely died before the bite victim. This then asks the question of what exactly happened at Midnight Motorist. Who are the footprints? Where did the BV go? And in my opinion, he was lured by Shadow Freddy to Charlotte's body. The main reasons I believe this is 1. Who else would lure the bite victim but Shadow Freddy? William wouldn't lure his own kid. And bite victim is obviously the Midnight Motorist kid, as already stated. 2. The line saying what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child potentially suggests that Shadow Freddy was the thing that the bite victim saw. This would make a lot of sense considering the fact that he is the final boss of FNAF 4, and the fact that it literally says shadows. 3. Shadow Freddy would have the motivation to do this, as if he was going to take bite victims to Charlotte's body, it would probably produce agony, which Shadow Freddy could then consume. He's also William's wickedness made from flesh, meaning the tactic that Shadow Freddy is using would come from where he originated. 4. This would explain the bite victim's fear of Fredbear, since Shadow Freddy and Fredbear share many similar attributes with one another, as well as many similar poses throughout the games. I think all of this adds up to a conclusion which makes sense and is probably true. Moving on to the experiment rooms. Bite Victim is attacked by the core 4 animatronics, which is Bonnie, Freddy, Foxy, Chica. But we also know that William is watching him. And the question is, why would William create these rooms and why would he be experimenting on the Bite Victim? In my opinion, it has to do with Charlotte. In the novel trilogy, the way that William found out about Remnant is that he saw Charlotte come back to life after Henry turned her into a robot. I think something similar happens here, when he starts to notice the puppet is acting weird, and wants to experiment to try to harness this energy, therefore making the experiment rooms in order to test AI to make the Funtime animatronics, which we see later down the line in the timeline. William also most likely spoke through the Fredbear Plush, since we do see it has a walkie-talkie near these experiment room cameras. This was most likely used in order to give direction in a way that the bite victim would respond to, or torment him as a punishment for what happened in Midnight Motorist. This all then moves into the week of FNAF 4, where I believe that Shadow Freddy haunts the Fredbear Plush from nights 1 to 5, tormenting the bite victim with the thing that he thought he saw, which from BV's perspective would have been Fredbear in shadows killing a kid who he knew, Charlotte. Shadow Freddy would feed off the agony from the torment that he was giving the bite victim, the same torment he most likely received from William during the experiment rooms. This would then lead to the bite victim being bit on the final night minigame, where we then go into minigame 7 or night 6, where the text color changes, showing a shift. That shift being in speaker, shifting to Charlotte. Charlotte
on the deathbed of Bite Victim, promises to put him back together, which she does, by putting the MCI kids and the memories that are attached to them into Happiest Day. Now, let me quickly explain why I believe that it's this in which I will put you back together is referring to, and not William. William, final speaker, goes off the idea that William does experiments to put his son back together, which he would then end up doing through Molten MCI. I have a problem with that, and the main problem is the dialogue. The dialogue in the ending minigame is clearly happening within the Bite Victim's own head, since the plushies fading away is meant to represent him forgetting his friends. You're broken, we are still your friends, do you still believe that? And as that's happening, the plushies are fading away. He doesn't remember his friends. And we even see the Fredbear Plush say, "I am still here," which is directly referencing Freddy, the final plush that isn't the Fredbear Plush, disappearing. Meaning this doesn't really make any sense if it was William in real life talking to his son on his deathbed. How would he know about the plushies being in Bite Victim's mind? William being the plushie on the last night of the minigame doesn't make a lot of sense when you consider William would have no context of what's going on. So every single line before "I will put you back together" wouldn't really make a lot of sense for William to say. Like, I don't think William would say, "We are still your friends, do you still believe that?" while talking to his child on his deathbed. But moving on, what would then happen is Shadow Victim, which is the theory that the Bite Victim's memories would get infused into the MCI kids later down the line when they die. There's many ways that people theorize this could happen. My personal interpretation has to do with him following the pain into the animatronics and then infusing with the kids when they possess those animatronics. Those kids are then entwined with the memories of FNAF 4 as well as the experiment rooms, and therefore also entwined with Shadow Freddy, explaining Shadow Freddy's connection to the MCI kids. And his connection to Golden Freddy would be due to the bite being infused into Golden Freddy specifically, which is the strongest memory from FNAF 4. Moving all the way up to the FNAF 4 nightmares, I believe those would be caused by Shadow Freddy manipulating the remnant that's inside Michael's body from when he got injected in Sister Location. Michael would be seeing the memories of the past, which is exactly what Eleanor does to Larson in the epilogues. I hope you enjoyed this incredibly long theory and video. It's taken a lot of time, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. Quick thank you to Eve for her amazing help on the Cassidy Plush part of the video. Thank you to Cuban for the awesome sprites that he provides. Also, go check out FNAF resources. I use it to make all my videos. But anyways, I've given you the options. I've given you the theories. I may have missed a few here or there, but I got most of the ones that people believe. But you may have a different take on the Fredbear Plush that I haven't heard, or maybe just have a different opinion. So make sure to put the comments down below. And if you're new to the FNAF lore, trying to figure out who you think the Fredbear Plush is, as the Fredbear Plush says, the pieces are in place for you. All you gotta do is find them. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Later.